a third form of harassment has now emerged in Japan.
Bro, it's Persona? If you don't know, right, if you don't know, the first palace in Persona 5 is based around the antagonist of the palace is this guy, right? He is the subway slammer, right? Kyuchi's name is an ex-baseball player that kind of got showed up by one of the characters in the game when she was only a little girl, and he goes on to get an aching for shoving women at the subway. The subway slammer villain in Persona 5 is actually based on a real thing in Japan. So Persona 5 Phantom X's villain Subway Slammer has gone viral, with a suited up salaryman becoming a goldmine for meme material. While his love for slamming people may be comically exaggerated, he actually specifically seems to like slamming women as well, in a shovey kind of way. This everyday looking businessman is based on a real life Japanese issue. Okay, so not an actual individual, an actual thing of, okay, what, people getting shoved on the subway. I know in Japan, don't they have, like, people who squeeze you into trains and stuff? Like, isn't that, I'm sure that's a thing, yeah, there's actually, like, pushers or something, right? Where, like, they, like, basically cram you into the train like a sardine. Like, their job is literally, like, shoving you in. I'm sure I've seen videos on that. I'm sure it's Japan, right? The subway slammer, whose real name is Takayuki Kiyoshi, is a disgraced ex-baseball player who takes out his frustration on people in public. His main source of relief comes from violently shoulder barging into women on busy train platforms. To be fair, dude's got a mean shoulder barge, because he lifted that other girl right up over the barricade on the subway, right, and into the track, which is kind of insane that he actually got that much air. Hence the name Subway Slammer. Japan slammer is a real problem in Japan. Butsukari otoko, or bumping man, refers to men who deliberately bump into women in public spaces, particularly on trains or station platforms. These encounters are often dismissed as accidental, but viral videos and posts online highlight how intentional they truly are. I have never heard of this. One of the most infamous cases dates back to May 25th, 2018, when a middle-aged man was filmed deliberately shoulder-checking multiple women on a busy platform in Shinjuku Station. The video quality quickly went viral and sparked a wave of victim reports, which in turn helped bring nationwide attention to the bumping man phenomenon. Tokyo Weekender reported that in 2024, out of a sample of 20,000 people, 14% of those surveys stated they had been attacked, while 6% revealed that they'd witnessed a shoving incident, and 5% replied that they had experienced both. What the hell? Yo, we gotta look at this. We gotta look at this, chat. We have to look at this, okay? This is insane. This is actually insane. It's just so wild, because obviously, you know, people are boisterous, they bump into people, people shove people. People are generally just assholes. But the fact that a crazy ass antagonist at the start of the game that's just so silly that it's funny is actually based on reality is kind of wild. Let me check this video out here from Hattis. Japan's new problem, Butsukari, and that means, I'm guessing bumping, right? Bumping man. Let's see what this is all about then.
It's a new problem. Harassment of people and physical assaults are increasing day by day. For a while, it seemed like Kazuhara, better known as customer harassment, where people abuse retail workers.
See, it shows, doesn't it? Like every country has its, you know, its part of its nation that's not wanting to be exactly promoted, right? You just don't think of this when you think Japan, right? You know? But I suppose when you've got a country, and of course, they have less of it in general anyway. We have a lot more of those problems in places like Britain and America and Europe in general. But I suppose when you've got a country that's so, like, restrictive in certain ways, that maybe you've just got these people who just blow up now and again. And I'm not defending it, and I'm not saying that's because of the culture, right? It's just interesting to think about. This is wild.
Their inability to fight back was the biggest problem. But things got even worse once chikan, men who sexually harass young girls, became a problem so big that even separating men and women during the rush hour wasn't enough to stop it. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get
I've actually had to get to the point of separating men and women at rush hour. That is insane. That is insane.
any worse, a third form of harassment has now emerged in Japan.
Bro, it's Persona. Bro, it's Persona. What the fuck? The actual editing as well there.
Just
That's
when it seemed
insane.
like things couldn't get any
That's
worse,
actually insane.
a third form of harassment has now emerged in Japan.
The editing, bro. That's diabolical editing. What
Japan
the
is
hell?
often seen as one of the safest and most polite countries in the world.
Right?
And while that has historically been true, recently something has happened that has changed everything. This didn't happen overnight, since for a long time,
Well, we got the subway slammeress here. What the fuck? I've heard as well, apparently in Japan, like mental health protections, you know, actual you know, the seriousness of it is kind of overlooked, and a lot of people who have mental health issues kind of get left to the wayside. Now, I can't like say that for a fact, but I've watched videos, you know, like these like Max Rotter type people, these people who are like you know, they become hermits in their own homes, they don't go out, all this sort of stuff. Apparently those sort of people kind of just get overlooked in Japan. And, you know, that happens all over the world as well. But I think it seems to be a bit of a specific problem that seems to happen in Japan. They don't quote me on that. I'm only going off like things I've heard. But apparently that's the case, right? That it's kind of a... I don't know if it's something that society just kind of wants to ignore and pretend it's not happening, or just doesn't want to get involved with it, or, you know, it's a lack of awareness or understanding. But it seems to be something that does seem to get quite overlooked. You know what I mean?
Japan
Is the chat
has
stuck
been
on stream?
boiling underneath.
Probably.
Decades
It's from
of
earlier.
social pressure, overwork, and emotional repression have created a large group of people who
Okay, again, like I said, this idea of the society being quite restrictive, emotionally repressive, you know, it's just not going to work for everybody, right? Although it will create an outwardly polite society, you know, it's going to cause some people to maybe bottle things up and it just boils over the edge, right?
feel invisible in Japanese society and powerless to control their lives, which eventually leads them to take out their anger on innocent people around them. These are called Butsukari. Butsukari are people who physically assault random bypassers during...
Okay, bro was definitely overacting that and amping that up a little bit, but like, even though that's really dangerous to do by the side of a train, yeah, because somebody could like slip down in between the actual station and the train, right? But like, dude needs to get a professional contract for a football team because he's got it to a T, man. All he needs to do now is just start rolling around on the floor holding his knee.
During rush hour, when
that's
there
wild,
are many
though.
people around and they can quickly vanish into the crowd. These random attacks usually happen inside train stations during the mornings when the crowds are massive and people are in hurry. Times like these are an opportunity for a Butsukari to attack someone in the crowd and quickly...
Why did that dude there look like the main protagonist?
During the morning,
you see that one guy then? He looked kind of like the MC.
People are in hurry.
Doesn't my guy here look like the MC? You know? I don't know
like
why.
These are an
bro looks like he's the main character.
Opportunity for a Butsukari to attack someone in the crowd and quickly escape from the crime scene before the victim or anyone else has time to react. The
See,
most common
it
way
shows as well, doesn't it, the difference in Japan? Because like, if you did that in a lot of other countries, there'd just be a scrap at start, right? People would just be fighting on the in the subway station.
For Butsukari to assault people is to slam onto them with their shoulder as hard as they can in the crowd. This is even where their name comes from, since Butsukari in English basically means a slammer. However, the term
So it literally is that dude. These are real life subway slammers.
Butsukari is essentially an umbrella term for all the people who physically assault random bypassers in the crowd. These can include kicking someone or something, pushing people around, and any other form of physical contact.
Okay, those guys just look like they're drunk, possibly.
Butsukari even go as far as causing permanent damage to their victims, like in the case that happened in Tamachi Station recently. A man who was on his way to work was approached by a stranger walking on the wrong side of the road. This stranger then forcefully slammed onto the man and continued walking. But then, after the victim had turned his back to the situation, he could hear the man running towards him from behind, and as he turned his head to
Top acting in the recreation there. Top acting in the recreation.
look, he was sucker punched to the head by the stranger who slammed onto him.
I suppose, like, with a country that's like Japan as well, I don't know the police situation, but I suppose they're not really, like, equipped to deal with this sort of stuff as it grows in the nation, right? Because, you know, you've got such a culture that's so polite and well behaved, if you will, right? To be able to react to this sort of stuff.
The stranger then grabbed the man by the collar and started kicking him to the head with his knee while shouting, "Don't underestimate us local people." After the altercation, the victim was...
And obviously, this is a reenactment, right? But the fact that it's a businessman in a suit doing that is so Japanese. That is so Japanese.
then rushed to the hospital, where he had to spend 2 weeks due to his injuries.
Holy cow.
These kind of incidents aren't
You
just
kick the
random
shit out
acts
of
of
him?
violence, since Butsukari are a well-known epidemic in Japan and it's only getting worse day by day. According to a survey, 14% of people in Japan have been victims of a
This
Butsukari.
is what it said on that article. That's a lot of people, right? That's a lot of people, and that's no small number. It's likely it's because it becomes more common. It becomes harder to help the majority due to lack of resources. That it's better to just ignore those that aren't overly harmful to others. Healthcare is a limited resource too. Yeah. You're talking about the mental health situation. Yeah, definitely.
However,
You know, it's a problem throughout the world, isn't it? And especially in the Western world, I suppose it's just more documented in the Western world, so it maybe looks like in the West that it's worse. But yeah, you're right. I think every nation really struggles to deal with it. Not just society in the systematic point of view, but I think as human beings, dealing with, you know, mental health is a hard thing for a lot of people to try and get their head around, right? When a lot of people suffer from it to a degree, you know what I mean?
some online surveys show even higher numbers. Most of these cases happen in large cities, and there's a clear correlation between the population and the cases. The bigger
What are we talking about? We're talking about the fact that the subway slammer in Persona 5, even though it's such a crazy story, is based on a real problem that's going on in Japan right now. Mental health is so case by case, it feels almost impossible to deal with. Yeah. Definitely, for sure. It's an incredibly hard thing to deal with. It just feels like, you know, I think it's more spoken about in certain societies, all right? You know? Again, I think this comes down to the Japanese being quite, you know, inward. It comes across as a nation that's not really public about when they're having problems, right? You know, they just get on with things, don't they? Which can be a good thing a lot of the time, right? But sometimes, you know, feeling like you can speak about these things, because that's one of the most important things when it comes to like mental health, right? Is feeling that you can, if you can at least recognize it. There's a lot of people out there that don't even recognize they've got issues, right? Depending on the severity of the issues they've got. And society feeling like it is something that can be spoken about, and then, you know, because once you recognize it, that's when people can at least start to be potentially helped, right?
bigger the city, the more Butsukari there are. One of the most common excuses by Butsukari is that they're fighting against so-called arukismaho, people who walk while looking at their smartphones.
Okay.
When confronted, many of them claim they're just teaching a lesson to the people glued to their phones, but in reality, it's just an excuse to justify random aggression. The interesting and unsurprising thing in all of this is that there seems to be a higher chance of getting assaulted the smaller in stature you are, which is why most of the victims are young women.
Makes sense. Bullies tend to pick on people who they think they can bully, right? That's kind of like, that's a tale as old as time, right? You know, a bully will usually go for somebody who they think's a weak target, somebody who they think can't fight back even if they try, but more than likely probably won't try. Bullies tend to do that, right? I'm not saying if you're ever getting bullied, you should start fighting with bullies, but bullies don't like a fight. They want to bully, you know, so makes sense. They're going to be going after women because they're cowards, right?
According to most of the surveys, women are the main victims of Butsukari, as can even be seen in all of these videos that I found online. There also seems to be a higher chance of getting assaulted the younger you are, and many times the attacks can be just as vicious even if you're young. As for
I wonder if this is like a generational thing as well, like, you know, with how fast society's changing in a lot of countries. You know, we do have we have class issues, don't we? We have race issues, and you know, there's definitely you know, ageism goes on in society, right? Both ways, right? You know, we look at people who are younger and who are older and think of them as other, you know, and I know a lot of obviously older people get frustrated by millennials and Gen Zs and stuff, and the other way around as well, right?
Example, in another recent case, a young woman was stopped at the station by a man telling her she was getting in his way. When the man got the woman's attention, he then punched her in the chest, which caused her to break her ribcage.
Damn,
Most
bro.
of the Butsukari seem to be older men, and since they tend to attack women and smaller people, to me it seems like these are troubled people with anger issues who then take their anger out to people in the most pussy way possible. By secretly slamming onto people much smaller than them because they're too cowardly to face their issues or their victims. The problem with trying to stop these Butsukari is that since they do it quickly and silently in a crowd while also pretending it's an accident, it's essentially almost impossible to convict them.
Still, that's Premier League worthy, that is, but still really dangerous doing it by the train, right? And of course,
even though it does
doing it
count
full
as a
stops,
physical
massive
assault,
dickhead.
it's hard to prove intent to their slamming, and unless it's caught on camera or the Butsukari confesses, they pretty much always walk free. Considering how common—
Damn, man, it's wild, isn't it? Like, you can tell, obviously, this Persona story is straight up written from, like, what's been going on. That's actually crazy. Like, we've all been laughing about the story and the memes, and then to think, like, it comes from a real place. Kind of wild.
When the Butsukari are, this is one of those things I'd like to warn all of you about when you're coming to Japan. Now, obviously, I'm not saying it will happen to you, but just be mentally prepared in case it happens. Since I've read many stories from people online who say their trip was ruined once they were attacked. If we just search shoulder check Japan on Reddit, we will be greeted with many posts like this. Recently, I went on an 8-day trip to Tokyo, but throughout those 8 days, I've been shoulder checked 1+ times 5 out of 8 of those days. I'm not gonna say it's gonna happen to you this much, since this seems a bit excessive, but the point is, it happens. It became so frequent that my family began to also retaliate by shoulder checking back.
So that's the thing, like the difference. I don't know where this person's from, right? Obviously, we've, you know, in the West, this is where people would start fighting. Probably don't want to do that. You go into a foreign country, right? You definitely don't want to be scrapping with locals, because it's not going to probably look very good, you know, obviously being a foreigner on your travels, unless it's caught on video. You might look like, you know, a Westerner coming over there to cause some trouble, especially nowadays we've seen what streamers have been getting up to, right?
The individuals. Now, I understand the feeling, and to be honest, I would probably start doing the same myself, but at the same time, I can't really say that starting to shoulder check people back is the most noble course of action here. However, I can't help but blame myself for it.
It's not even about it being noble, it's just, yeah, you could end up getting yourself locked up, man.
As if I deserve this for being a tourist in Japan. How can I at least mitigate getting shoulder checked next time I come back?
That's when you need to do the roll, you know? Wait for a minute. The roll push, right? Using the momentum and body weight against them.
Woman and didn't speak much Japanese, so I did communicate in Mandarin to my family. Yeah, this is kind of the sad state of affairs at the moment, that Japanese people aren't really too fond of Chinese tourists, or by any tourist by that matter. But, like, don't get scared. Like, you will have great time in Japan, and 99% of people will be...
Again, from what I've heard when it comes to Japan, like a lot of other countries, right, I think it's just that sometimes people from other countries can be... maybe come across as obnoxious, loud, maybe rude potentially as well, right? You know, in the way they go about things. You know, I've heard from certain people who've been to Japan, you know, like certain little obviously being able to speak Japanese is going to help you massively, but being able to, you know certain, I I guess, not really catchphrases, but sayings and stuff and replies to people can be a big factor in helping people respond to you in a little bit more of a polite way. Because sometimes we might do, obviously culture's different, do things that we think we're being polite, but we might come across as rude. And then of course you're just gonna have people who are dickheads who are like, yo, look at this prick from fucking England over here coming into my country, fucking dickhead. Obviously you're gonna have that, right? Every country's got that.
Nothing but nice to you, but you know, there's a lot of tourism in Japan right now, tensions are high, and there will be racist anywhere you go in the world. Quick rant, my spouse and I were walking through Shinjuku Station with a local friend to grab lunch. As we walked by the west exit, an older Japanese man punched me hard in the ribs next to my right breast. It was a well-aimed punch as I was wearing a small backpack, so he managed to hit just
Roll's got
my
accuracy
arm and a back as I walked by. Oh, that sucks. As you can see, even from this story.
The way you said that. Oh, that sucks. That's impressive accuracy though, fair play.
It's not like the Butsukari will always, shoulder slam you hard, because sometimes they might do other things, like in this woman's case, she said that the older Japanese man punched her really hard to her, rib cage. I was shocked. When I turned to look, he raised both his fists and shook them in my face. In retrospect, I wish I'd grabbed his hand and yelled for a guard, but I just hurried away.
Oh, that sucked. Anyway.
In the crowd. I didn't post this to scare anyone away from Shinjuku Station or from traveling in Japan in general. I'm feeling a bit raw about it, that's all. That last part that she said is a really good thing to say, and that is also the message I want to leave all you guys with. Japan is a wonderful country with wonderful people, but
yeah,
just
I'd love
like
to get to
any
Japan.
country,
I really
it
would.
has its problems and its crazy people. Right now, the government is trying to take countermeasures against Butsukari, for example, by separating the roads to encourage people to not walk towards each other. None of this will...
That's such a Japanese solution, right? That is such a Japanese solution. Yeah, again, I'd love to get to Japan. It is a bucket list for me, right? It is a bucket list place to go for me. I'd love to go to Tokyo. I'd love to go to, like, obviously places outside Tokyo as well, but I'd really like to go to Japan. There's a few places that I'd like to do in my life. Japan's definitely on that list.
Really help in the end though, since big cities
Japan
like
needs a
Tokyo
Dodge counter.
are gonna have their problems, and people like this will always exist. In the end, the scary part of Butsukari isn't that they exist, it's the fact that they've learned how to blend in, and you'll never know when you become a target.
Actually, kind of crazy. Again, the subway slammer
For a
is
while, it's
real.